The 4 stages of self-mastery no one talks about. Stoic Lavas. Have you ever caught yourself living the same day, over and over again? You wake up, check your phone, scroll, reply, eat, work, scroll some more. You move through the hours like a machine on autopilot, and when the day ends, you wonder, not why it was hard, but where it went. Not because of chaos or catastrophe, but because of a quiet drift. A drift that feels like you're alive, but not really living. This isn't laziness. It's something more subtle, more dangerous. It's unconsciousness, the silent killer of your time, your purpose, and your discipline. And this is where the Stoic journey begins. The Stoics, over 2,000 years ago, understood something modern science is just now catching up to. Most people aren't living, they're reacting. We're not deciding our paths. We're playing out invisible scripts written by habit, by fear, by society, by noise. Think about your own day. How many of your actions were truly chosen? How many were inherited? You reached for your phone, not because you decided it was the best way to start your day, but because it's a reflex. You said yes to a task, not because it aligned with your values, but because it was expected. You avoided a conversation, delayed a project, indulged a craving, not because it served you, but because it felt comfortable. The Stoics called this living without direction, and Carl Jung would later echo it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Discipline doesn't start with forcing yourself to do hard things. It starts with noticing, with pausing, with seeing what's truly driving you beneath the surface. Picture this. A young Roman soldier rises before dawn. He sharpens his sword, ties his sandals, and kneels by his small oil lamp. But instead of rushing into training, he opens a scroll and reflects on a single question. Is this the life I chose, or the life I've inherited without question? This is not fiction. This was the reality of many practicing Stoics. From Marcus Aurelius to Epictetus, these were warriors and emperors. But before all that, they were thinkers, observers of the self. And they understood. A life lived on autopilot is not a life fully lived. So the soldier makes a choice. He doesn't just follow orders. He questions them. He doesn't just follow a routine. He redesigns it. And in doing so, he begins to reclaim something that most people lose: his agency. You can do the same, but it starts with awareness. Let's bring this home. You don't need to, when you say yes to an obligation, ask, is this aligned with who I want to become, or am I reacting? These micropauses, just a few seconds of presence, they are the seeds of real discipline. Because if your days are being shaped by unconscious reactions, so is your character. And if your character is just a collection of impulses, then you are drifting, not because you're weak, but because you're unawake. But here's the good news. You can wake up at any moment. The Stoics didn't teach discipline as punishment. They taught it as presence, as awareness, as the sacred power to choose again and again, even in the smallest moments, the person you want to be. So here's your challenge today. Pause, choose, and in that choice, take the first step. Not toward perfection, but toward authorship, toward becoming the quiet architect of your own life. Because the opposite of drift is direction. And direction begins with one powerful question. What will I consciously choose right now? Once you begin to live with awareness, another truth quietly rises to the surface. One that the Stoics knew well, and one that modern life often resists. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect made visible. When you choose consciously, not reactively, Your next challenge isn't just awareness. It's loyalty. Loyalty to who? To the version of you that you know exists, but haven't always honored. The part of you that wakes up early with purpose, that says no when temptation whispers, that keeps its word even when no one is watching. Because here's the truth. Discipline isn't about others seeing you at your best. It's about you not abandoning yourself in your weakest moments. Let me tell you about a quiet warrior, not from legend, but from life. She's not famous. She doesn't have followers. No one sees her 5 a.m. alarm. No one applauds her cold shower or quiet journaling ritual. No one claps when she says no to distractions or when she bites her tongue during conflict instead of lashing out. But she knows. She knows what it's like to have betrayed herself before, to have promised change and abandoned it, to have dreamed loudly and acted softly. She remembers the pain of self-disappointment, and she has made a silent vow: never again. That is discipline. Not for applause, but for alignment. Not to impress, but to respect the person you're becoming. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Discipline is your daily opportunity to prove, not to the world, but to yourself, that you are no longer in hiding. It is the handshake between your values and your actions. It is the act of choosing long-term clarity over short-term comfort. Think of it this way. Every time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," you're not just delaying an action. You're whispering to your future self, "You can carry the weight I refuse to." And eventually, that self starts to disappear, not because you failed, but because you forgot to protect it. The Stoics warned us, without self-command, freedom becomes illusion. You become a slave not to a tyrant, but to every craving, every impulse, every excuse. In our culture, we celebrate results, but often neglect the rituals that lead to them. We worship transformation, but mock the silence that produces it. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's often lonely. It shows up as refusal, refusing to gossip, refusing to scroll, refusing to indulge what feels good but steals your peace. That's why most people abandon it. It doesn't give you dopamine. It gives you dignity. And dignity is harder to measure. But make no mistake, every small act of discipline is a declaration. I will not live beneath my potential, even if no one notices. So what does this look like in real time? Waking up on time, not to check a box, but because you promised yourself you would. Nerding what nourishes you, not to impress others, but to respect your energy. Peaking less, not to be mysterious, but to avoid betraying your values through careless words. Cheaters before reacting, not to seem wise, but to live wisely. Each of these choices is a form of self-respect, not the loud external kind, the quiet kind, the kind that whispers, "You're not perfect, but you're trying," and that's sacred. Discipline is a strange kind of love. It doesn't hug, it doesn't flatter, it doesn't tell you what you want to hear. It tells you the truth, that who you are today is not all you could be, but who you become is your responsibility. So here's the invitation. Don't chase motivation. Build discipline. Not because it's trendy, not because someone's watching, but because you refuse to let yourself down again. Because this time, you are not making promises to the world. You're making a promise to yourself. And this time, you will keep it. Let's imagine something with me for a moment. What if every small act you took today was not just a task, but a vote? Not for a political party or a cause, but a vote for who you are becoming. That's not a metaphor. That's your life. Every decision you make, to rise early or sleep in, to speak calmly or lash out, to move forward or procrastinate, is a quiet ballot you cast. Not once, but repeatedly. And those votes, they don't just record a pattern, they shape your identity. Here's the most liberating and terrifying truth. You are not stuck being who you've been. That version of you, crafted by habits, fears, memories, and cultural scripts is only one possible draft. Stoic thought gives you permission, no, responsibility, to rewrite it. Epictetus taught us that we are not our circumstances, but how we respond to them. Marcus Aurelius added that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And today, we add, your identity becomes dyed by the color of your actions. Want to become disciplined? Do disciplined things. Want to become kinder? Act with compassion, especially when it's hard. Want to become fearless? Move through discomfort, not around it. You don't wait until you feel like the person you want to become. You act as if you already are, and then, slowly, surely, you are. There's a story of an actor preparing to play a Stoic philosopher for a major film. He read all the books, practiced the lines, and tried to understand what it meant to live with stillness and dignity. But the director gave him unexpected advice. Don't act like a Stoic, just be one. So he did. He simplified his life. He took cold showers. He practiced silence. He meditated each morning. He journaled at night. Not for the camera, but for himself. By the time filming ended, he wasn't pretending anymore. That's the point. Acting as if isn't fake. It's the most practical form of becoming. The Stoics understood what modern neuroscience confirms. Your brain doesn't distinguish much between thought and behavior. Repetition wires identity. So when you choose, today, to sit with discomfort instead of running, you are reinforcing courage. When you choose to write instead of scroll, to lift your body instead of sinking into the couch, to breathe deeply instead of snapping, you are constructing the emotional architecture of your future self. These are not just habits. They are bricks in the foundation of the temple you're building. Not on a mountain, but within you. Here's how this looks in the real world. You want to become a reader? Start reading 1 page a day. Not to finish the book, but to cast a vote for I am someone who reads. You want to be less reactive? The next time you're criticized, pause, breathe, smile. Vote I am someone who responds, not reacts. You want to live with more courage? Have the difficult conversation. Take the cold plunge. Launch the idea. Vote I am someone who acts in spite of fear. The results don't matter yet. The votes do. Because identity is not built by proclamations. It's built by patterns. One day, people will describe you with words you only dreamed of now. Calm, strong, reliable, unshakable, kind, resilient. But they won't appear out of nowhere. They'll appear because today, and tomorrow, and the day after that, you voted. Not loudly, not for anyone else to see, but silently, with your actions. And when that future version of you stands tall, rooted, and centered, they'll look back, not at one big moment of transformation, but 1,000 small votes that whispered, "This is who I am becoming." And you'll smile. Because by then, you'll know. You didn't just wish for it. You lived into it. Build discipline that matches your nature. The first phase is about waking up, realizing you've been sleepwalking through habits you didn't choose, reacting instead of responding, and finally making conscious decisions about who you want to become. But what comes next? Now that you're aware, now that you've cast your votes for the future you, how do you build a life that doesn't just look disciplined on the outside, but feels sustainable on the inside? That brings us into the second stage, designing your life with intention. And it starts with one very misunderstood truth. Effective discipline is not about copying others. It's about crafting rhythms that respect your nature. The myth of the ideal routine. Open any social media feed and you'll be flooded with morning routines from millionaires, monks, athletes, CEOs. Wake at 4 a.m., cold shower, 2-hour meditation, green juice, 1,000 push-ups, write a novel by 7 a.m. These rituals might work for them, but when you try to fit into someone else's system, it's like wearing a beautiful suit that's 3 sizes too small. It looks impressive on the mannequin, but it suffocates you in real life. The Stoics, though strict with themselves, never taught imitation. They taught alignment, the harmony between virtue and your inner logos, your rational nature. That means your discipline must match your temperament, your season of life, and your purpose. Not softer, not lazier, just truer. Case study: 2 paths to the same summit. Imagine 2 men, both trying to cultivate discipline. The first is intense, fiery, thrives on structure. For him, discipline is rigid. 5 a.m. workouts, precise meals, strict deadlines. His routine is military, and it works. It fits his rhythm. The second is contemplative, creative, slightly chaotic in energy. When he tries to follow the first man's plan, he fails miserably. Not because he's weak, but because it's not his way. When he finally stops mimicking and designs his own system, focused blocks of deep work in the afternoon, journaling under moonlight, long silent walks instead of gym reps, he begins to flourish. Both are disciplined. Both are serious. But only one is living according to his own nature. Seneca said, "Let each man find out what best suits his soul and follow it with discipline." That's not softness. That's wisdom. The design question: what serves your becoming? The right question is not, what routine is best? It's, what routine makes me stronger without burning me out? What rhythm makes me more me? This is life design. Not hustle porn, not borrowed routines, not guilt-driven overwork. The Stoic approach is to know your character like a craftsman knows their tools. Some tools are forged for force, others for finesse, but each has its purpose, and only the wise learn to wield what's naturally theirs. You want discipline? Beautiful. But not to prove anything, not to get likes, not to feel superior. You build it as a quiet devotion, not to your ego, but to your becoming. Practical application: designing your day like a philosopher. Here are a few Stoic-inspired prompts to begin this process. When do you feel most mentally clear? Morning, afternoon, or night? Design your hardest task there. Do you gain energy from solitude or from others? Schedule recovery accordingly. What drains you consistently, even if the world says it's productive? Cut it. The soul knows what robs it. Where 2 actions make you feel aligned, purposeful, steady, make those non-negotiables. Then build your life around those answers, not around an influencer's post or a podcast's formula, because imitation may impress others, but alignment nourishes the self. Closing thought: the architect within. You are not just the laborer. You are the architect. You do not exist to follow a plan written by strangers. You exist to design a life that whispers peace into your bones. A life that stretches you gently into your potential without fracturing your soul. Discipline, when rightly tuned to your nature, doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like poetry, like rhythm, like home. So the work now is not to push harder blindly. It is to listen deeply and to design wisely. Take it because the life that fits you best is the one only you can create.
Structure is a form of mercy.
In the last chapter, we explored the idea that discipline must match your nature, that you shouldn't contort yourself into someone else's routine, but rather craft rhythms that resonate with your soul. But intention without structure quickly dissolves into good intentions. That's where the next insight comes in, perhaps the most counterintuitive one yet. Structure is not a prison. It is an act of mercy.
Let's unpack this, because when you hear the word structure, your mind might picture strict routines, alarm clocks, color-coded planners, or a loss of freedom. Picture this: a boat at sea, untethered by anchor or compass. At first, it feels free. No rules, no restrictions, just open waters and sky. But without direction, it soon begins to drift. Winds carry it where they will. Storms toss it without resistance. Days pass. The horizon never changes. That boat? It isn't free. It's lost. We're the same. Without a structure to guide us, a rhythm that roots us, we become hostage to distraction, mood, and outside chaos. We confuse motion with meaning, activity with progress. Structure in this light is not control for control's sake. It's an anchor for the soul. What the Stoics knew about order. The Stoics, far from being cold, robotic disciplinarians, were masters of structure because they valued the inner life so deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations every morning, not to impress anyone, but to steady himself for the storms of the day. Epictetus reminded his students that a life without philosophy, without some form of inner and outer order, was like a man entering a battle without armor or training. They weren't obsessed with systems. They simply understood that without order, our better self is buried in the noise. Seneca even likened life to a play. Life is long enough if one knows how to use it. What he meant was, the days are not short, they're simply squandered when left unshaped. Structure is how we shape them.
Compassion in the form of a calendar. Here's a radical idea. Your calendar can be an act of self-love. Most people weaponize time management, as if filling every hour proves their worth. But that's not Stoicism. That's slavery to productivity culture. What if instead, structure was how you protect your peace? Allow boundary of deep work hours to honor your craft. A block of quiet time so your thoughts can breathe. A simple evening ritual to unwind the mind before sleep. A weekly reflection practice to assess your path and adjust. Not to earn applause, but to stay awake to your life. You don't need to be rigid. In fact, the best structures are gentle and breathable, like scaffolding during a restoration, there to support, not to suffocate. Structure as a shield against the world's chaos. In a noisy, uncertain world, most people live reactively, chasing emergencies, bouncing between interruptions, and mistaking chaos for urgency. But you're not here to be tossed around like driftwood. You're here to build something solid, a life that holds its shape even when things around you fall apart. Your structure becomes your shield. Not against pain or failure, those are inevitable, but against forgetting who you are in the middle of it all. A journaling habit keeps your inner voice intact. A morning walk anchors your clarity before the world rushes in. A plan for your week reminds you of your true priorities, not just what's screaming the loudest. In that way, structure is the mercy you extend to your future self. Closing thought. The spine of a life well lived. Bones give the body its shape. Without them, we collapse. In the same way, structure is the spine of a life well lived. It's the framework that allows flexibility without collapse, creativity without chaos, motion without madness. So don't fear structure. Don't treat it as the enemy of freedom. When crafted with intention, it becomes your ally, your silent support, your daily compass, your invisible friend whispering, stay the course, stay awake, stay true. Because a life without shape is a life forgotten. But a life with structure, matched to your nature, anchored in your values, becomes a masterpiece of quiet strength. Every minute is a brick in the temple of your life. There's a quiet danger in believing that some moments don't matter. We scroll through a screen, we kill time, we say, it's just one day, or I'll get serious tomorrow. But here's a sobering truth. There are no neutral minutes. Every moment you live is either laying a brick in the temple of the life you're building or silently tearing one down. Whether you realize it or not, you're always in construction, always designing, always choosing, and even when you don't choose, that too is a choice. The illusion of later. Many people live under the myth of someday. Someday I'll start waking up earlier. Someday I'll take my health seriously. Someday I'll write the book, apologize, take the leap. But days drift, and the bricks never get laid. The Stoics were ruthlessly clear about this. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire, wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." To him, every minute carried moral weight, not in a guilt-ridden way, but in a way that honored the sacredness of life. He saw time as a resource more precious than gold, and each use of it, each conversation, each decision, each reaction, was another stone in the structure of his character. Your life is not built in the grand moments. The temple of your life isn't built on birthdays, promotions, or breakthroughs. It's built on what you do at 7:12 a.m., when the alarm goes off and you feel like hitting snooze. On what you say when you're frustrated, tired, or unseen. On how you treat your craft when no one's watching. Great lives aren't made in loud applause. They're made in the quiet choices that stack up day after day, minute after minute. That's why Stoicism doesn't tell you to be heroic. It tells you to be consistent. Epictetus said it clearly. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. That embodiment happens in ordinary time. Each moment is a moral decision. Let's go deeper. Every minute isn't just productive or unproductive. It's formative. You're not merely getting things done. You're becoming someone. When you decide to show up early for a commitment, even when no one else does, you become reliable. When you choose to stay calm during conflict, you become wise. When you resist a short-term distraction in favor of long-term growth, you become resilient. These aren't just behaviors, they are bricklaying actions in the architecture of your identity. The danger of wasting time isn't just that you'll fall behind, it's that you'll become someone who doesn't honor time. And that's a much greater loss. The cost of living on autopilot. Many people wake up one day years later and ask, how did I end up here? The answer, though painful, is simple, one unconscious minute at a time. They didn't choose mediocrity or regret, they just didn't notice they were choosing at all. But when you become conscious of time, truly aware that each minute is a vote for the life you want, your decisions change. You stop waiting for permission. You stop numbing yourself with distraction. You begin to walk with purpose, even in the small things. You are always under construction. Think of your life like a temple, not a fragile one built of glass, but a solid one built of stone, brick by brick. The question is, what kind of temple are you building? Are your bricks placed with intention or thrown carelessly in a pile? Is your foundation rooted in your values or in reactions to the world around you? Does your structure reflect who you want to become or who the world pressures you to be? You don't need to be perfect. No temple is built in a day. Some bricks may be cracked, some may need replacing, but the work must continue, one moment at a time. Final thought, time as a sacred craft. In ancient Rome and Greece, temples weren't just places of worship. They were symbols of devotion, crafted with patience, attention, and reverence. What if you treated your life the same way? What if every task, every conversation, every breath was a sacred act of construction? This isn't about control, it's about care. When you live as if each minute matters, your life begins to reflect something rare. Presence. And presence, sustained over time, builds more than success. It builds peace. So next time you feel like a moment doesn't matter, remember, that moment is a brick. That brick shapes your temple, and that temple becomes your legacy. Build wisely. Phase 3. Action and sustained discipline. 1. Don't wait for motivation. Move without it. The greatest lie will see this future. The greatest lie will see this future. Will asked, the greatest lie will see this future. The greatest lie will see this future. Will asked, the greatest lie will see this future. 1. Don't wait for motivation. Move without it. The greatest lie will see this future. The greatest lie will see this future. The greatest lie will see this future. Elapsed, the greatest lie will see this future. 1. Don't wait for motivation. Move without it. The greatest lie will see this future. The greatest lie will see this future. Elapsed, the greatest lie will see this future. The greatest lie will see this future. Elapsed, the greatest lie will see this future. The motivation feel like it, before you act.
The Stoics write what you feel like it. And then discussings. And then the sape is that even.
Look at history. The soldier who stepped onto the battlefield wasn't ready for the fear. The parent holding their first child wasn't ready for the weight of responsibility. The artist facing the blank canvas wasn't ready for what would come out. But they began, and in beginning, they became. Action is the antidote. There's something magical that happens when you move. You shift from thought to force. Your energy, once trapped in anxiety or hesitation, suddenly finds direction. And that direction fuels itself. One small step becomes a second, then a third, and before long, you've built a rhythm. You no longer need to feel motivated because you're now carried by momentum, by the deeper satisfaction of forward motion. This is the Stoic ideal. To do the work not because it's easy, not because it's exciting, but because it's yours to do. The discipline of beginning. Let's be clear. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Stoic discipline isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up, especially when it's inconvenient. If you commit to writing, start with one paragraph. If you want to train your body, begin with a 10-minute walk. If you aim to heal, pick up the phone and make the hard call. The power is in the beginning, not because it's big, but because it breaks inertia. And once inertia is broken, you become a different kind of person. Someone who moves. Detach from the drama. Here's something rarely talked about. We dramatize effort. We turn simple tasks into emotional sagas. Waking up early becomes a battle with self-worth. Sitting down to work becomes a war with procrastination. Saying no to distraction becomes a crisis of identity. But what if you stripped away the drama? What if you said, "This is what I do," and did it without needing to explain, justify, or hype yourself up? That's the Stoic path. Quiet power. Not loud, not flashy, but steady, immovable, and sharp. Momentum is a spiritual practice. There's a spiritual dimension to this too. When you move without motivation, you aren't just building habits, you're building trust in yourself. Each time you follow through when it's hard, you're sending a message to the deepest parts of your psyche. I can count on me. And that changes everything. You become someone whose word means something. Someone whose actions aren't dictated by the weather of emotion, but by the compass of values. Final thought. Walk before the fire comes. Sometimes the fire of inspiration comes after you start walking, not before. You tie your shoes and step into the cold. You sit down with your journal even though your thoughts feel dull. You show up to train even though your limbs are tired. And then, slowly, the fire kindles. Don't wait for the muse. Don't sit around for courage. Begin. Without fanfare. Without fire. Because sometimes the act of beginning is the spark. And once you light that flame, it carries you farther than any feeling ever could. Without order, you pay in silence. It doesn't happen all at once. The unraveling is slow. At first, it's just a missed routine, a skipped morning walk, a delayed task, a postponed commitment. You tell yourself you'll catch up tomorrow. No big deal. But beneath the surface, something begins to shift. Not loudly, not in a way that alarms you, but quietly, almost gently, like the tide pulling a boat away from the shore. This is the cost of disorder. It doesn't scream, it whispers, and the whisper is erosion. The invisible price of chaos. People imagine that collapse happens in grand gestures, dramatic failures, explosive meltdowns, visible rock bottoms. But more often, collapse is subtle. It's forgetting your purpose, losing your rhythm, letting your standards slide, not catastrophically, but incrementally. And before you even realize it, you've wandered far from who you intended to be. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But what about when those thoughts are scattered, reactive, undirected? When you live without order, your thoughts don't shape you, they fragment you. Structure is not a cage, it's a compass. We resist structure because it feels like a prison. We think freedom is waking up whenever we want, doing whatever we feel like, answering to no one, not even ourselves. But ask anyone who's lived long in that kind of freedom, and they'll tell you, it isn't liberating, it's disorienting. Structure isn't a shackle, it's scaffolding, a framework for your growth, a way of honoring your potential by showing up for it with consistency. Even the wildest rivers need banks. Even the most brilliant minds need rhythm. The slow descent into drift. When life lacks order, we drift, and drift is dangerous, not because you move fast, but because you don't realize you're moving at all. You lose days in distraction. You lose your focus in noise. You lose yourself in habits that feel familiar but empty. And eventually, you wake up wondering why you're tired all the time, even though you've done nothing that deeply challenges you. Why you feel anxious, even though there's no crisis. Why you're stuck, even though everything looks fine. That's the toll disorder takes, not in disaster, but in dullness. Not in collapse, but in corrosion. The discipline of daily alignment. The antidote isn't complexity. You don't need a 50-step productivity system or a color-coded calendar. What you need is alignment between who you are and how you move through the day. That begins with rituals. Not perfection, not rigidity, but deliberate moments that call you back to yourself. Maybe it's a 5-minute review at the end of each night. Maybe it's choosing the first hour of your morning to be silent and tech-free. Maybe it's setting a structure that respects both your ambition and your humanity. These aren't chores, they're anchors. They keep you tethered to the version of yourself you're building. Order as a form of inner peace. The Stoics didn't believe in chaos for chaos's sake. They understood that to endure life's storms, you need an internal fortress, and that fortress is made from order. Seneca wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Without structure, no effort feels meaningful. You're busy, but not effective. Tired, but not fulfilled. Order doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but it gives you a stance from which to meet it. Like a warrior polishing his sword each day, even if the battle never comes. Like a builder who sharpens his tools, even if the work hasn't begun. This is quiet preparation, invisible strength. Final thought. Your life is a system. Build it wisely. Every system you live in, your habits, your schedule, your space, is either supporting you or eroding you. There is no neutral. And every day that lacks structure is a day where you borrow energy from your future self, the one who will pay the interest of fatigue, confusion, and self-doubt. But every day built with quiet order is a day that deposits confidence in your emotional bank account. Not flashy, not viral, just steady progress. So ask yourself, what in my life feels chaotic, not because it's hard, but because it's unstructured? And then, don't wait for the perfect system. Create a simple one. Live it. Adjust it. Let it serve you like a quiet ally. Not because you're weak, but because you're serious. Because without order, you pay in silence, but with it, you grow in peace. Tame the dopamine. Rewire the reward. There was a time when a sunset was enough, a conversation, a page in a book, a walk through silence. But now, our attention is hooked, our emotions hijacked, our biology exploited, and most of us don't even realize it. We are not just distracted. We're being trained, moment by moment, to crave the shallow over the deep, the instant over the meaningful. The tyranny of easy rewards. Every ping, every like, every scroll, every just one more video. That's not just harmless entertainment, it's programming. Not in some conspiratorial sense, but in the raw, neurological truth of it. Your brain is being rewired. Not toward patience, not toward depth, but toward speed, novelty, and constant stimulation. And here's the real danger. What feels like pleasure is often just relief from boredom. And what feels like choice is often just conditioned reaction. We don't crave these things because they nourish us. We crave them because they're designed to be irresistible. Dopamine, the double-edged messenger. Dopamine, the chemical of pursuit and reward, is not the enemy. It's a tool. But like any tool, when used unconsciously, it controls you. It's the reason you open your phone 80 times a day. It's why a 3-second delay makes you frustrated. It's why real work feels harder than ever, even when it deeply matters to you. You are chasing spikes. But those spikes come with a crash. A slow erosion of attention, a dulling of joy, a shrinking of willpower. And over time, the long, slow things, the things that actually change your life, feel unbearable. Reading, writing, building, sitting still. They're not boring. Your nervous system is just overstimulated. And the only solution is to rewire your reward system. From shallow hits to deep satisfaction. This is not about quitting dopamine. You can't. This is about retraining your brain to find reward in the things that truly move you forward. To learn to crave focus. To take genuine pride in effort. To feel deep satisfaction in completion, not just clicks. Think of this as shifting your emotional economy. From 100 tiny pleasures that fade in seconds to 3 hard-won victories that echo for days. That's the transformation. Not escaping reward, but choosing better rewards. Practical rewiring. One choice at a time. So how do we begin? Not by willpower alone, but by designing environments that support deeper living. Turn off autoplay. Your phone out of reach during sacred work hours. One scroll session a day with something that stretches your mind. You finish a focused task, pause and let the satisfaction land. Don't immediately rush to the next thing. Because this is how the rewiring begins. Not by denying pleasure, but by teaching your brain that real pleasure lives in depth. The Stoic take: mastery over self. The ancient Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't have TikTok, but they had temptation, distraction, the pull of comfort. And their answer was always the same: rule yourself first. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And what lies beyond your control? External rewards, opinions, fame, viral attention. What lies within your control? Your focus, your choices, your time. So, reclaim your inner authority. Stop letting algorithms tell your brain what to crave. Stop giving your joy to things designed to make you hungry, not whole. Final thought. Reward yourself with your own becoming. Here's the secret they don't tell you. The deepest pleasure in life isn't in the thing you get. It's in who you become to get it. It's in the confidence built from keeping promises to yourself. It's in the quiet pride of showing up day after day for the version of you that still lives in the future. It's in looking at your progress and realizing, I earned this. So tame the dopamine, not by starving yourself of joy, but by learning to savor a deeper one. The kind that lasts, the kind that makes you feel whole, the kind that doesn't spike and vanish, but roots and expands. Because every moment you train your brain to love what is worthy of your time, you're no longer just living, you're evolving. Phase 4: Consolidation and Elevation. What you do in private defines you in public. True character is forged in the shadows, when no one is watching, applauding, or keeping score. There comes a moment on this journey when the applause fades, the compliments stop, the motivation wanes, the spotlight moves on, and all that's left is you. You and the silence of your choices, the unseen arena. This is the phase where most people drift, not because they failed, but because they misunderstood the nature of mastery. See, the first steps of transformation are visible. People notice when you change your habits. They praise your new discipline, your clarity, your drive. But eventually, the external rewards slow down. The novelty wears off. You stop being impressive to others. And that's when the real test begins. Because now, you're in the unseen arena. No stage, no audience, just the quiet room where decisions echo forever. And in that room, only one question matters. Who are you when no one's watching? Private integrity builds public power. We live in a world obsessed with performance, with numbers, with visibility. But the most powerful people you'll ever meet didn't build their strength in public. They built it in the dark, in the early mornings when they showed up, not for praise but for purpose. In the lonely hours when they chose the harder path, not for recognition but for respect for themselves. In the small, invisible decisions that shaped their future character. These moments don't make headlines, but they make you. True greatness is silent. There's a kind of success that looks flashy, and there's a kind that feels sacred. One is built for others, the other is built for you. And ironically, the latter, the one you build in the shadows, is the one people trust most in the light. Because public confidence is born from private consistency. Leadership is earned when people sense that you are whole, not just skilled. And wholeness comes from what you do when nobody's clapping. The mirror test. Here's a question more important than any trophy. Can you respect yourself in the mirror when no one else is around? When you close your laptop for the day, when you brush your teeth at night, when there's nothing left to distract you? Do you feel at peace with how you lived that day? Not whether it was perfect, but whether it was honest, whether it was aligned with your values, whether your actions honored the future you're trying to build. That's the mirror test. And it's the one that defines whether your growth is real or just for show. Repetition, without applause. To elevate your life, you must fall in love with repetition without applause. Because excellence isn't built on hype. It's built on habits, on returning again and again to the things that matter, even when they feel dull, even when they go unnoticed. This is where the Stoics thrived. They didn't wait for recognition to do the right thing. They acted with virtue because it was right, not because it would be seen. Epictetus wrote, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." He didn't say post about it. He said do. In silence, in simplicity, in truth. Cultivating sacred rituals. In this phase, you must develop private rituals, not routines for productivity's sake, but practices that protect your soul. Allow journaling habit that no one sees. Allow morning walk without headphones. Reading not to post about the book, but to digest its truth. Reckon night, not for content, but for conscience. These acts, humble and quiet, become the bricks that build your integrity. Because character isn't built in the moment of performance. It's built in the 1,000 moments before, when no one's looking. The hidden foundation. Think of your life as a temple. The world only sees the spire, the stone carvings, the beauty on display. But the temple stands because of what's beneath, the hidden foundation, deep in the earth, shaped by choices no one applauded. This foundation is built in the way you respond to difficulty when no one's tracking your attitude. Practice patience with people who will never thank you. Tell me to temptations no one would judge you for saying yes to. Keep promises to yourself even when no one would know if you broke them. That is greatness, and it begins not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. So as we enter this phase of consolidation and elevation, remember, success is not a moment, it's a rhythm. A private rhythm of choosing again and again what is worthy, when no one's watching. And if you master that, you won't just succeed, you'll last. Success can make you soft. Stay sharp. Success doesn't break you, it quietly dulls you. Stay sharp. Not because you're weak, but because you've worked too hard to lose your edge. The most dangerous enemy of progress isn't failure, it's comfort. And sometimes, success, the very thing you fought for, becomes the slow poison that lulls you to sleep. It doesn't arrive like a crash. It seeps in like a warm bath, pleasant, soothing, slowly stealing your edge. The trap of arrival. You reach a goal. People recognize your growth. They applaud you. You're finally seen. It feels good, and it should. But that's where the trap begins. Not in celebration, but in the attachment to it. In the slow shift from building to basking, from striving to settling. You begin to think, maybe I can ease up a little. So you skip one early morning, then another. You start to let small things slide. Habits, words, standards. And the worst part? No one notices. Because the world only sees results, not the rot behind the surface. Decay doesn't scream. It whispers. And by the time you feel it, it's already taken root. Success isn't a finish line. It's a test. When you were struggling, you had hunger, you had fire, you had something to prove. But success is a different battlefield. It asks, can you stay sharp when no one is chasing you? Can you maintain discipline without desperation? Can you rise without needing crisis to push you? Many can survive hardship. Few can survive comfort. Ancient wisdom, the Roman general. There's a story of a Roman general who returned victorious from battle. Crowds cheered. Gold showered his chariot. Praise flooded the streets. But behind him stood a slave, assigned one duty: to whisper in his ear every few moments, "Remember, you are only a man." Why? Because the Romans knew victory inflates the ego, and the ego, once bloated, begins to rot. So even in triumph, they injected humility, not to diminish success, but to preserve the warrior within. Sharpen the sword, even when there's no fight. Think of a blade. When it's new, it's sharp, dangerous, clean. But left unused, it doesn't stay sharp forever. It rusts. It dulls. It becomes a relic. Your discipline is no different. You don't sharpen a sword because you plan to fight today. You sharpen it so that if the fight comes, you're ready. The Stoics trained this way. They practiced hardship when life was easy. Cold baths, fasting, solitude. Not to suffer, but to stay ready. Modern success and silent decline. Consider John, a high-achieving CEO. He built his company from scratch, slept under his desk, worked 80-hour weeks, hustled through storms. Eventually, success arrived. Wealth, prestige, power. Then came the softening. Late mornings, skipped workouts. Luxuries became norms. No one called him out. After all, he earned it, right? But one day, a crisis hit. And John wasn't the man he used to be. His edge was gone, his clarity fogged. Success had dulled him. Not in a single moment, but over years of silent comfort. Great warriors train not just for war, but during peace. Because peace is not the time to rest. It's the time to build strength quietly. Let success make you grateful, but never complacent. Let it teach you humility, but not softness. Keep your mind uncomfortable, even when your life is comfortable. Because the moment you stop moving forward, you're already sliding backward. The Stoics understood this truth deeply. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor of Rome, wrote to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't writing as a ruler. He was writing as a man, fighting his own drift towards softness. If the most powerful man in the world had to remind himself to stay sharp, what makes us think we're safe from decay? So here's the challenge. Don't just train for the climb, train for after the summit, because reaching the top isn't the end. It's the beginning of the next test. Will you get lazy? Will you plateau? Or will you rise again? This time, not from pain, but from principle. That's the mark of real growth. When you no longer need pressure to push you, you're pulled forward by your own standard. Not because others are watching, but because you are. Are you ready to take that discipline, born in the shadows, and keep it alive in the light? If so, let's move into the next part of this final phase. The discipline of legacy. Because the habits you maintain today are what your future self will inherit. Shall we? If you don't measure it, it's not growth. Without self-reflection, there is no transformation. You cannot improve what you do not observe. So, you've built the habits. You've mastered the motions. You wake up early. You keep your structure. You stay sharp. But here's a hard truth many never realize. Discipline without reflection becomes a prison, a rigid shell of behavior, impressive on the outside, but hollow within. Why? Because true growth isn't just about doing. It's about becoming. And you cannot become anything new unless you first learn to see yourself clearly. The mirror you refuse to look into. We live in an age of performance. We track steps. We measure progress. We document routines. We check boxes. But ask someone, what did you learn about yourself this week? And silence follows. Not because nothing happened, but because we didn't pause to notice it. Busyness is not growth. Repetition is not reflection. And without reflection, success is just a loop, repeating the same chapter louder. The Stoic practice of self-examination. Each night, before sleep, Seneca would sit alone and ask himself, what bad habit have you conquered today? What mistake did you commit? What virtue did you cultivate? He wasn't punishing himself. He was polishing himself, like a blade honed daily, not because it failed, but because it mattered. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wasn't writing for the world. He was writing to himself. A journal of brutal honesty, not public performance, private course correction. These men didn't reflect because they were weak. They reflected because they were serious about becoming who they claimed to be. Growth that is not tracked disappears. Think about a gardener. He doesn't just water plants blindly. He watches, measures, adjusts. Too much sunlight? He moves the pot. Too little growth? He checks the soil. But how many of us treat our lives with the same care? We grind, hustle, push, but never ask, am I becoming more patient or just more efficient? In making me kinder or just colder? In today or just survive it? If you don't measure your inner life, your outer success becomes meaningless. A modern story, the coach who forgot to reflect. There's a man named David, a high-performance coach. He trained athletes, executives, elite soldiers. He was relentless. He practiced everything he preached. But one day, his teenage daughter asked him, "Dad, why do you work so hard if you're always tired and distant when you come home?" That sentence broke him. Because in all his optimization, he had stopped evaluating the why behind his actions. He had optimized activity, but ignored alignment. And without reflection, he had drifted from his values, even while appearing successful. Your nightly audit. 5 minutes to save a decade. You don't need an hour. You don't need to journal like a philosopher. You just need 5 honest minutes. Ask yourself each evening, 1. Uviadum did I do today that I'm proud of? 2. Where did I act out of fear or ego? 3. Wikoristo moment today tested my values. 4. Did I get closer or further from the person I'm becoming? 5. Will I do differently tomorrow? These questions are not rituals. They are rescue lines, pulling you back to yourself before you drift too far from the shore. From motion to meaning. If discipline is the engine, then reflection is the steering wheel. Without it, you move, but in circles. With it, every action has direction. Every habit gains soul. Every routine becomes a tool, not a cage. And this is where Stoic discipline transcends productivity. It becomes philosophy in motion. A life of choice, not compulsion. A path of presence, not pressure. The final threshold. So, where does all this lead? Back to the simplest, hardest truth. You are responsible for who you become. And that responsibility doesn't end with action. It deepens through attention. Growth is not just built, it is witnessed. And only the person who dares to look inward, with honesty, with courage, with grace, is worthy of the person they are trying to become. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself not just what you did today, but who you were. And then tomorrow, begin again. Not from guilt, but from awareness. Because the path isn't finished, but now you walk it with open eyes. Thank you for spending your time here with me today. If this message spoke to something inside you, if it helped shift your perspective, even just a little, then it's already served its purpose. Remember, transformation doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, consistently, with every choice you make. And if you want more stories, insights, and Stoic wisdom to keep guiding that journey, this is just the beginning. Don't forget to like the video if it resonated with you, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss what's coming next. Together, let's keep growing, calmly, courageously, and consciously. Until next time, stay grounded. Stoic Lavas.